You won't believe what happens every Tuesday at 12 p.m. in my town. The local news blames a microclimate anomaly, and the weather app just calls it a scheduled shower, but that's not what it is. The first time it happened, I was on my lunch break, scrolling my phone on a park bench, when the sky went from clear blue to dark slate in exactly 3 seconds. No wind, no warning, just a sudden hush, like the whole town had been placed under glass. At 12:01, the drizzle begins. Not heavy, just a fine, silvery curtain that starts and stops as if someone pressed play. That's when the worms appear. At first I just thought the ground was boiling from the rain, the way it sometimes looks when soil gets waterlogged. Then I realized it was moving with intention. Every earthworm in a 3-block radius pushes out of the ground at the same time. Lawns, flower beds, the cracks along the sidewalk within seconds. The concrete and grass are covered in pale, glistening lines. They don't squirm at random, they arrange. I watched, frozen, as the worms slid into position like pieces on a living blueprint. At my feet, they curved into a spiral, each body aligning with eerie precision. Smaller circles nested inside larger ones. I recognized the pattern from some video on Beautiful Math that auto-played once. The golden ratio. On the street corner, they formed a branching pattern like a frost-covered window pane, a fractal, repeating itself in smaller and smaller echoes. None of them overlapped. None of them collided. It was choreography. The second Tuesday, I went out on purpose. I told my coworkers I needed fresh air, but really, I needed proof I wasn't losing it. I walked the same 3 blocks, phone in hand, pretending to check emails. At 12 o'clock, the world went quiet again. A dog across the street stopped barking mid-sound, its mouth still open. The drizzle started, thin and cold. This time, I paid attention to more than the ground. I watched the people. A man in a suit paused mid-step, blinking slowly as if he'd forgotten where he was going. A woman pushing a stroller stopped in the middle of the crosswalk, staring straight ahead with vacant eyes. Traffic didn't honk, no one shouted. The normal human friction of the city: impatience, irritation, noise just muted. At 12:01, the worms came. They emerged like they'd been waiting just under the surface, packed along the roots and pipes and stones, listening for a cue only they could hear. They spread out and began to form shapes that made my stomach knot. Not spirals this time, not branching trees. Lines, short segments and angles, intersecting in rigid, deliberate clusters. I crouched down, ignoring the drizzle soaking my hair, and traced one of the formations with my eyes. Numbers. The pattern broke into 2 sets, separated by a clean gap. One cluster repeated a grid-like structure I realized were degrees and minutes. Coordinates. I pulled out my phone and with shaking fingers typed them into a map app. The pin landed in the middle of the ocean, far out past any shipping lane or tourist route. Just blue. Empty. When the 17 minutes were up, the rain simply stopped. The worms loosened their formations, became just worms again, and began to slip back underground. The people around me blinked once, resumed walking, talking, pushing strollers, as if no time had passed. The dog finished its bark. The world unpaused, except I remembered everything. The strangest part isn't the worms or the timed rain. It's what happens inside my head during those 17 minutes. The first week I thought the sudden rush of clarity was just adrenaline. I'd been stuck on a decision about whether to quit my job, months of pros and cons, sleepless nights, half-written resignation letters saved in drafts. But as the worms formed their golden spirals, the entire problem rearranged itself in my mind. Every branch of the decision tree snapped into place like a puzzle suddenly solved. There was no anxiety, no second guessing. I just knew what I had to do, and why. The second week, it happened again. Different problem. I'd been avoiding a conversation with my sister about our mother's care money. Responsibility, resentment we'd both swallowed for years. During the Worm Coordinates event, the emotional mess untangled itself. Complex feelings sorted into clean, understandable lines. I saw exactly how to phrase what needed to be said so it would land without destroying us. It didn't feel like thinking, it felt like receiving. By the 3rd Tuesday, I stopped pretending it was a coincidence. I planned for it. I made lists of the choices that were paralyzing me, whether to move cities, whether to tell my therapist about the things I didn't dare say out loud, whether to report the things I'd seen on those coordinates to anyone at all. At 11:59, I'd stand outside, list in pocket, heart pounding. At 12 o'clock, the sky would dim, the air would hush, the drizzle would begin, and my mind would be wiped clean of noise. Imagine every worry you've ever had, suddenly rearranging into a simple flowchart with one highlighted path. That's what it's like. No voices arguing, no what-ifs, no spiraling. Just pure, quiet certainty. I'd watch the worms spell out angles and impossible shapes on the ground, and at the same time, some unseen hand would be drawing lines inside my brain, connecting things I didn't even know were related. Last Tuesday, the worms created something new. They didn't form math this time. They slid into tight clusters of tiny, repeating symbols, loops, slashes, hooked shapes that didn't match any alphabet I knew. Some patterns repeated across different patches of sidewalk, like separate screens showing the same message. I took photos, zoomed in later, tried running them through translation apps. Nothing. One app suggested they were most similar to musical notation, which made no sense. until I realized something. The feeling in my head had changed. It wasn't just clarity anymore. It was timing, not what to do, but when. I found myself walking out of my apartment precisely 2 seconds before a neighbor's flower pot slipped off a balcony. I stepped back from a street corner a heartbeat before a speeding car ran the red light. I paused in front of a store window, phone in hand, just long enough to run into an old friend I'd been meaning to talk to for years about a business idea. All week, tiny, almost invisible dodges and alignments kept me perfectly threaded between accidents and missed opportunities. Like my life had been nudged onto a very narrow, very intentional track. Today is Tuesday again. I'm writing this at 11:42 a.m., watching the sky through my window. The clouds are already forming that familiar, unnaturally sharp edge, like someone dragged a slider and lowered the brightness only over our town. My list for this week has just one item. Should I follow what it's trying to show me? Because I've realized something I wish I hadn't. The worms aren't just displaying patterns. They're escalating, from beauty, to location, to language, to timing. They're teaching, training, aligning. Whatever is orchestrating those 17 minutes isn't just answering human questions, it's grooming human decisions. Whether services will tell you scheduled rain happens when systems stabilize over urban heat islands, or some other phrase that sounds technical enough to shut down curiosity, and maybe where you live, that's true. But if you ever notice your town's weather hitting the exact same minute, down to the second, every week if the air gets too quiet, if the animals freeze, if you feel your thoughts go strangely light, like someone's lifting them out of you, don't just look up, look down, watch the ground. Watch what crawls out and what it draws. Write down what you suddenly realize during those moments and ask yourself why you didn't see it before. Ask yourself who benefits from you making that choice, at that time, in that exact way. The answers you've been begging for might not be miracles or breakthroughs. They might be instructions. They might be coordinates. And they might already be waiting under your feet, pressed against the underside of the world, listening for the next Tuesday at 12 p.m., when the rain starts and the conductor gives the signal. Let me know in the comments if you felt the same. I can't be the only one. Don't forget to follow for more Midnight Manuscripts Chronicles.